So once you got the basics down of your stand-up paddleboard stroke, let's see if we can get it a little bit more advanced, if you will. So we're going to take a peek at a couple different things here. When we're looking at beginning that stroke, and we're about to paddle out of the water, we want to make sure we get a good reach out in front. So when we do that, before that blade enters in the water, you notice how I'm trying to turn this outside shoulder back and get a little bit of rotation down through the trunk, which is going to help get me a little bit more length in the paddle out in front. So that's going to make my stroke a little bit longer as I try and drive through. Now once I got that length, I'm going to try to keep the paddle fairly vertical as I dive it down into the water. So once we've got the blade submerged, and that's the other big thing, mistake a lot of people make, is at this point here they just start to skim the paddle backwards and never fully get the blade submerged. You want to really dive and bury that blade down. And right here I'm trying to drive down hard on this top arm, but then I'm also trying to stay stable in this shoulder here, so that way I can effectively hinge at the hips to try to put a lot of my body weight into that paddle. So instead of thinking about bringing the paddle to you, you want to think about driving the paddle down into the water. So you're going to bury that blade, get the whole thing submerged, you're going to get your body weight onto it, and you get a lot more power on that stroke. You can also see there when I'm diving down, I get a nice bow, I get a nice flex in the paddle. That's a lot of free energy right there. When I start to let up on that, that tail of that paddle is going to give me a nice little whip direction in that back end and give me a lot of free energy. So the more I load that paddle, get a little bow on there, it's going to help make that a lot more effective. Now the other big part here is going to be the exit. So once I've got that weight down, a lot of people will take that stroke way too long and the paddle doesn't exit until back behind the feet. I want to exit right at the feet. So I want to get the paddle just there. It's going to be hard because it's moving. But as I drive through and then right there at the feet, I'm starting to pull out. Now another thing that's going to help that paddle exit quicker is turning this top hand to cut the blade. That's also going to help on really windy days. So you're going to slice the blade. So as you come out, you notice that there's that little turn in that top hand. Again, I'm looking at my left hand here. And that little turn, I'm getting the blade sideways now. So instead of having that blade face into the wind, I'm actually cutting through the wind, which is cutting down some of that resistance. The other thing that does, whoops, is you're going to notice it gets the paddle out of the water quicker. So as I dive that in, as I start to make that turn, I can actually start to recover the paddle and move it forward while it's still in the water. So that's going to help with my stroke frequency. So it gets the paddle out of the water quicker, helps me recover, and then I can dive into my next one. So getting it long out there, again, you can see that I'm pulling back on this shoulder, trying to drive down, bury the paddle, put that weight into it, get it to the foot, turn it, and exit. Another big thing that we're looking at is that when we get that paddle into the water right here and get that blade submerged, now again there's a little bit of bow in the paddle, but if it wasn't, I'd have a fairly vertical line with that paddle straight down. That's really, really important. It's going to help me drive a lot more power into that. So let's see what it looks like real time. So driving, driving, driving. Now it looks like it's a really short stroke, but we are getting a lot of ground covered. And we'll look at it one more time in slow motion just so you can see all those different aspects. So turning that left shoulder, diving that paddle down into the water opposed to pulling it back. And that way you get a lot more power onto that stroke.